Welcome back. We're discussing the question, given the latest airstrikes in Libya, is the U.S. in a cycle of war? Still with us, William Binney is a former U.S. NSA whistleblower. Bill Reggio with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and Hussein Ibish is a columnist, author, and scholar of Middle East affairs. Let's get back to the discussion. William, we know that wars make for strange bedfellows. Let's look at the war that's taking place in Yemen right now. It's being carried out largely by one of the closest allies of the United States, Saudi Arabia. But recently, the Washington Post had an article in which it said that Yemenis actually consider themselves to be at war with the United States, not with Saudi Arabia. The United States supplies huge amounts of weapons to Saudi Arabia. It also has one of the worst human rights records, also reported by the Washington Post. What is the point of the war in Yemen?
I really don't know. I can't tell. I mean, it just seems to be perpetually going on. I mean, the factions there are struggling to take power, that's all. And when you destabilize an area, you break factions up, and then they compete for power.
I can explain that war to you pretty quickly. Okay. It's a proxy war between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is directly involved on the ground, pushing back against what they perceive as Iranian-backed rebels in exactly the reverse order as exists in Syria, where Iranian troops on the ground and Hezbollah troops are fighting against what they perceive to be Saudi, Turkish, and Qatari proxies. So you've got mirror image wars going on there. The ostensible reason is to reestablish the control of the internationally recognized legitimate government of Yemen, the Hadi government, and pursuant to a UN Security Council resolution. The problem is, of course, that a lot of people are getting killed in the process, including a lot of civilians and some children. The Houthis and their allies have behaved maybe even worse than the coalition, but they don't have an international address, whereas the Gulf states do, and they're more responsible. So,
but again, just like other places, I don't see any leadership trying to lead us out of this situation.
No, there isn't. In fact, it's interesting. I would argue that U.S. acquiescence to the Saudi and Emirati war in Yemen is kind of a quid pro quo for the Gulf states putting up with their dissatisfaction over U.S. policy in Syria. So that the U.S. kind of puts up with policies they don't agree with in Yemen and demands that the Gulf states go along with American policies in Syria, and everybody puts it aside. And so far, it's keeping the ball in the air. I'd say that's what's really going on in Yemen.
Hussein,
there's another part of this war, too, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which has controlled significant amount of territory in the south. That's the U.S. hook for this war, and it's a legitimate hook. AQAP is one of Al-Qaeda's most dangerous branches. It's a master bomb maker.
In fact, now the UAE forces have given up the war against the Houthis and the Saleh group and are focusing on AQAP, and that's where the U.S. is getting dragged into the war in South Yemen, where it's not the Yemeni civil war, but this counterinsurgency program that is an endless quagmire for the Emiratis and the Americans, and it's turning into a very familiar scenario that we've been discussing this whole time.
But Hussein, is the aim of this war to determine who forms the legitimate government in Yemen, or...
Well, there's no debate about that. The Hadi government is the legitimate government.
Yeah, but or is the war I'm talking about, or is it to establish which is the dominant power? If you say it's a proxy war.
Well, both. Yeah. I mean, regionally, okay, so internally, there's no doubt about the legitimacy of the Hadi government. I mean, that's the UN. Nobody really, even the Iranians don't dispute it. They are secretly supporting an effort, a coup against it, but nobody really says Hadi isn't the legitimate government of Yemen. He's just not capable of ruling in most of the country. Yes, regionally, it's a power struggle between the Iranian-backed faction and the Saudi-backed faction, and that's what it is. And the United States finds itself very much in the Saudi camp, mainly for two reasons, mainly because of long-standing alliance, and the other is because ultimately the Saudis support our long-term aims and the Iranians don't in the region, but ultimately it's a local fight between two power blocs in the region.
Bill, how deeply is the United States involved in that war in Yemen?
Oh, it's deeply involved. The military is now announcing when it conducts airstrikes there. There were 4 announced strikes last month, 1 this month. But the U.S. has been conducting drone and conventional airstrikes inside Yemen consistently since 2009. As a matter of fact, the first drone strike the U.S. ever launched killed an al-Qaeda operative in Yemen in 2002, and then there was a 7-year hiatus. But the U.S. is also providing special operations force support, logistical support, intelligence support, and I'm backing the UAE in its fight against AQAP. So yeah, the U.S. is enmeshed in this war
In February,
as part of its effort to wage war against the global jihadists.
in February, there was a meeting between senior administration and senior Emirati officials in which they agreed to focus on a major counterinsurgency anti-AQAP effort in southern Yemen. It's getting going right about now, and you can expect the U.S. to be much more heavily involved in southern Yemen with the Emiratis in this counterinsurgency program that's, that has all the problems we've been talking about this entire program.
William, there are occasional questions being asked in Congress here in Washington about supplying weapons to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia buys billions of dollars worth of weapons from the United States. These weapons are being used in this war in Yemen. In some instances, and we're not sure about this because we can't tell, but the weapons could have been used against civilian targets. A hospital's been bombed, a school's been bombed. When those questions are asked here in Congress, is it just window dressing? Is it just, and not in a wink, and we're going to sell the weapons anyway?
Well, from where I sit anyway, Congress doesn't seem to be really willing to do anything about this.
Yeah.
They simply tolerate everything that's being done. I mean, they're not standing up. They have a responsibility here that they should live up to, but they're not doing that. I mean, I think the administration is also being turned by interests in the military. I still say the military-industrial complex has a lot of money to be made here. If these conflicts continue, they make a lot of money from both sides, if you will. They can supply weapons like supplying weapons out of Libya to the rebels in Syria, through Turkey. All of that ends up, we have to fight that too, so that's more money and more weapons, more military-industrial complex profits. And we don't have anybody looking into this or trying to put a strategy together for our government as a whole, trying to pull the whole region together to get it to work, to solve these issues, to try to stabilize the region. We're not doing that. And that's because Congress and others are abdicating their responsibilities.
Okay, well, let's look to the future. Let's go to Bill. Bill, do you expect anything to change after the elections in November, presidential? The new president will be here?
I don't see much changing. I think the U.S. Look, to me, the real fight that has yet to been fought is that ideological struggle that needs to happen. It's a war within Islam. More Muslims are killed in this war by jihadists than anyone. And what the U.S. and the West should be doing is supporting those on the right side. We're not doing that effectively. And we're unwilling to really we're calling this a war against violent extremists and whatnot. And, if there's anything that Trump's, to me, in my opinion, he's going to go far on the other side and alienate any groups that we could work with in the Muslim community. And I think Clinton, you'll probably just get sort of Obama medium. She'll be a little more heavy-handed with her military action. But I really don't see, nothing is really going to change because I think you're going to, no matter who's elected, you're going to continue to get bad policy.
Do you agree that under President
I pretty much
Clinton?
agree with everything Bill said, yeah.
Hussein, what's your view?
Hard to disagree with it. I mean, I don't think we know what to expect from Donald Trump, except that he seems an empty vessel. Therefore, he would probably just replicate a kind of a familiar Republican foreign policy approach. And I agree with Clinton. You're going to get Obama less light a little bit, but something really very similar. So yeah, I think there isn't anything in the political debate that points to a better policy, I'm afraid.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks to all of you for joining us.